You've probably admired a flower's beauty, right? But have you ever really stopped to think about what it's actually doing? Today, we're going to look right past those pretty petals to understand the brilliant engineering behind how flowers really work. So let's just dive right in. A flower isn't just some decoration sitting in a field. No way. It's one of nature's most sophisticated reproductive machines, and its entire existence is laser focused on one single vital goal. So let's start by kind of reframing how we think about them. We're going to move from seeing flowers as these passive, pretty objects to really understanding them as active, highly strategic biological systems. That's it. Everything about a flower, I mean everything. Its color, its scent, its shape, it's all a highly evolved structure that's been designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to create the next generation of plants. Okay, so to really get the different strategies that flowers use, we first have to know the essential parts. Think of it like the reproductive blueprint that makes this whole thing possible. Right at the center of all the action, you've got the pistil. This is the female component. Its job is to receive pollen, and if everything goes according to plan, it's the part that can eventually grow into a fruit. And surrounding the pistil, we have the stamen. Its whole purpose is to produce and hold on to the pollen, that fine powder that's so crucial for fertilization. And yeah, for some of us, it's also the reason we're sneezing all spring. Okay, now this is where it starts to get really interesting. You know, nature never does things just one way, and it turns out not all flowers are built the same. There are two fundamental designs we need to know about. First up, you've got what are called perfect flowers. You can think of these as the all-in-one model. They have both the male stamen and the female pistil right there in a single blossom, which makes them this self-contained reproductive unit. This is actually the most common strategy you're going to find in the plant kingdom. And you've definitely seen a ton of these. Lilies, roses, dandelions, even super complex flowers like orchids. They're all classic examples of this self-contained, perfect flower structure. But then, some other plants have evolved a completely different strategy. They separate the male and female functions into entirely different blossoms. And these, as you might guess, are known as imperfect flowers. This approach is super common in vining plants. So if you've ever grown cucumbers or gourds or melons in a garden, you've seen this in action. Some of the flowers on the plant are strictly male, and others are strictly female. So just to recap the huge difference here. Perfect flowers are a one-stop shop for reproduction, all packed into one. Imperfect flowers, on the other hand, require a little more coordination between those separate blossoms. And this brings up a really key point. With imperfect flowers, it's only the female blossoms that are equipped to turn into a fruit after they get pollinated. The male flowers, well, they just produce the pollen, and then their job is pretty much done. So all of this leads to a pretty major puzzle, right? I mean, plants are stuck in the ground. So how on earth does pollen from the male stamen actually get all the way over to the female pistil to complete the process? Well, that transfer is called pollination, and it is the single most critical step for a flower's success. Seriously, without it, there's no fertilization, no seeds, and no fruit. It's a deal breaker. To solve this mobility problem, a lot of plants have, well, they've recruited some helpers. These insects and animals, like the famous honeybee, they act like a vital delivery service for the entire plant world, moving that precious pollen from flower to flower. The journey of a single bee is the perfect example of how this works. See, the bee isn't trying to pollinate anything. It's just looking for a sugary meal of nectar. But as it's grabbing food, pollen from the stamen gets all over its fuzzy body. Then it flies to the next flower, and some of that pollen just happens to rub off onto that new flower's pistil. And boom, mission accomplished, completely by accident. Now, this whole journey raises another question. It's not just about how the pollen travels, it's also about where it ends up. And this brings us to two distinct methods of pollination. So get this, if pollen from a flower's stamen lands on its own pistil, that's called self-pollination. But if it travels to a completely different flower, that's cross-pollination. Now, self-pollination is pretty reliable, obviously, but cross-pollination is often what nature prefers because mixing genes from different plants creates more genetic diversity, and that helps the whole species adapt and thrive over time. And that brings us to a final thought to tie all this together. Given what we now know about their anatomy, which type of flower has all the necessary parts right there in one place to pull off self-pollination? When you think it through, it really reveals the simple but incredible logic of the natural world, where every single detail has a purpose.